Sheikh, may Allah have mercy on you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, may Allah have mercy on you and cover your faults. Ameen. What is the ruling on female circumcision? Are the hadith mentioned regarding its permissibility authentic, weak? If so, why does the female sexual desire have to be curbed? Is it is fulfilled in a halal manner? Won't curbing the desire lessen the husband and wife's pleasure? How do we apply this practice in 2017? Barakallahu feek. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Ameen to your dua, and for you, the likes, bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani, walaki bid mithil. May you have something similar to that, if not greater than that. Ameen. May Allah hide your faults and reward you. Ameen. With regards to the question of FGM, female genital mutilation, or female circumcision, the answer to the question is a branch and is based off of another issue in Islam, and that is male genital mutilation, or male genital castration, or male genital circumcision, or male circumcision, whatever word or term that you want to use. Castrating a man, wal-'iyadhu billah, a man castrating himself, a male child being circumcised, all right? A woman being circumcised, that's number one. Number two, a woman's genitalia or a woman's genitals being mutilated and totally removed or damaged, that's another issue. These things are based off of the first issue, and that is, what is the ruling for a man to be circumcised? Before we go that far, many people, they have a misconception about this issue, Muslim and non-Muslim. We have Muslims that don't have a lot of knowledge and they think they do. Muslims who are totally influenced, totally in love with Western modern culture, or what they call consider science, and the list goes on, human rights, women's rights, freedom, and the list goes on of the terms that they use. And then we have Christians, many vicious and malevolent Christians that play with words, play with terms. And the biggest thing that they play with, or the thing that's played with in the middle, is making circumcision mutilation. The two words are totally contrast. To circumcise someone does not mean to mutilate someone. That's first and foremost. Circumcision is one thing, mutilation is something totally different. Inside and outside of Islam, the actual word, to mutilate somebody. Just listen to the words themselves. How do they sound? I circumcised my baby boy. I mutilated my baby boy. The word mutilate in itself is a strong word. And we all know that it is a science behind words, how they're derived, how they're put together in Arabic and outside of Arabic. In English, there's a science behind the word itself. To circumcise is not the same as to mutilate. So therefore, we don't mix these things up. So there are ignorant Muslims who mix them up, and there are evil non-Muslims who mix them up. I've actually seen videos like this. And they say any hadith or any Islamic ruling that pertains to female circumcision or male circumcision, they automatically call it genital mutilation. And that's scientifically wrong. That's a khata. Based off of ignorance or based off just pure evil. So let's not mix oranges and apples together. So therefore, in Islam, is it permissible? Is it mandatory for a male to become circumcised? From that issue, we take the ruling of a woman being circumcised, let alone a woman having her genitals or her genital mutilated. We've answered this question previous times with regards to circumcision. And we mentioned the madhahib of the ulama with regards to circumcision. Some of them say that a male must be circumcised, it's wajib. And others say it's virtuous, fadila. You don't have to do it. Some of them say the child should be circumcised when it's a baby. Some say before 7. Some say before puberty. Some say after that. With regards to a revert, a man was a Christian, a man was a Hindu. He was not circumcised. And then he accepted Islam. And this is a real life question of someone. Okay? Then they want to get married. There was a Hindu brother once. Inshallah, he's a Muslim now, and he wanted to marry a Muslim sister. The story was in Guyana. Okay? He was Hindu. And he wanted to marry a girl who was Muslim. So him being a Hindu, he was never circumcised. So when he accepted Islam and professed Islam, and he wanted to marry this Muslim girl, the family, one of their biggest concerns were, what are we going to do with his uncircumcised penis? So some of the muftis and the mullahs, qadis there in Guyana, they said he has to get circumcised, even though he's a grown man, and the list goes on. So therefore, the ulama, they differ on the ruling of getting circumcised for a male. Okay? Alright, some say it's mandatory, others say it's preferable. Khair, we're not here to discuss that again. And they also differ on the ruling of a woman being circumcised. Some say that it's sunnah, it's recommended, it's preferable. And others say that it's not preferable at all. Or they say it's mubah, it's something that's unprescribed. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. Those ulama who say that men must become circumcised, they use general proofs, specific things. From them is that it's the way of Abraham, our forefather. As Abdullah ibn Abbas has narrated to us, that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he got circumcised after he was 80 years old, inside Bukhari and others. Alright? And Allah says, ثُمَّ أُوحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Allah says, and then we told you, Muhammad, we revealed to you, follow the religion of Abraham, who was Hanif. He turned away from shirk. He went to Allah and turned away from others than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was never from the polytheists. So Ibrahim was circumcised, and Allah told us to follow Ibrahim. Also Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah tells us, and remember when Allah tested Abraham بِكَلِمَات, with words. فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. And Abraham, he fulfilled those words. He implemented those words. He actualized those commandments that Allah gave to him. And many of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, they said that from the Al-Kalimatul Khams, the 5 things, or they say from the things, the words that Allah tested Ibrahim with was Al-Ikhtitan, or Al-Khitan was circumcision. So that's one of the proofs that they use. Also they say that when a male is not circumcised, they say then it is a means of dirt, is a means of filth, with regards to the head and the tip of his penis and the skin that's around it. When he uses the bathroom, when he cleans himself, let alone dirt, lint, sweat, perspiration, these things, they'll be all around the head of his penis, in the skin of his penis, and that leads to all types of major health problems for himself, for his sexual partner, his wife that he's going to sleep with. Okay, and they say that being clean and pure is a condition of the salah. Physically clean and pure, and having the ritual tahara as well. So how can he pray and he has urine on him, on his penis, in his underpants? So they say it's mandatory, because the thing that's mandatory, if it can only be implemented through a means, then that the means also becomes mandatory as well. Khair, inshallah. And other ulama, they hold the view that they don't have to get circumcised, and they say as long as you can keep clean, you keep yourself clean, the urine or the filth or the dirt, you clean the skin of around the head of your penis, there's nothing wrong with that. And they say, such as Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala said, قَدْ أَسْلَمَ الْأَسْوَدُ وَالْأَحْمَرُ. He says all of the people accepted Islam. People from this country, from this part of the world, so on and so forth. And it was never known that the Prophet told them, circumcise yourself. And if circumcision was mandatory upon a person being a Muslim, then it would have been mentioned that the Prophet told the people, get circumcised. It would have been well known. And something of such paramount importance wouldn't just be mentioned from general proofs and evidences. So that's from the dalil of those ulama who say that it is not mandatory for men. And they also say that circumcision is a means of exposing one's awrah, and it's unnecessary. You don't have to show your penis to someone to circumcise you. Let alone they say it's harmful. They say it's dangerous. It is a means of you destroying yourself, blood loss, infection, and that's unnecessary. Obviously, the health standards and the standards of hygiene, of medicine, of surgery of the past is not like today. But even today, when you read and study it about a grown male getting circumcised, there are still some health risks. And it's very costly. And it is dangerous. And some people, they say that you have to take off work for weeks after you get circumcised, for weeks. So that's money, that's health, it's all types of harms that could possibly come from circumcision if you weren't circumcised as a young child. Most people in America, Allah knows best, or I can't say that, Allah Alam, I don't say most people, many people, they are already circumcised in the hospital. Even though it's a Protestant Christian country, supposedly, okay, a Christian country, something that they took from the Jewish legislature with regards to circumcising the male baby. That's in brief. So as far as the women, a woman getting circumcised, then some ulama, none of them say that's necessarily mandatory, okay, but they say it's either recommended or not. And perhaps there are some who say that's mandatory for women as well. Perhaps, mumkin, perhaps, all right. From the people who say that it's recommended, is they say that it's a well-known practice that was known among the Arabs. And it was something that was from the ways of their forefather Ismail, who was obviously the descendant of Ibrahim. And they use as a proof for this when the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا الْتَقَى الْخِتَانَانِ أو إِذَا مَسَّ الْخِتَانُ الْخِتَانَ فَقَدْ وَجَبَ الْغُسْلُ. The hadith that says, when one khitan touches another khitan, one circumcised part enters another circumcised part. Okay? Or even in the colloquial term that the people use, they say skins. When they talk about having sex with a woman, they say skins. It's an asl behind this. As if the hadith says one circumcised skin touches another circumcised skin. This is what the hadith is telling us. إِذَا مَسَّ الْخِتَانُ الْخِتَانَ. When the khitan touches the khitan. Obviously, the hadith doesn't mean circumcision touching circumcision. That's not what the hadith is saying. But it's saying when circumcised skin touches circumcised skin. The tip of the man's penis, which has been circumcised, the skin is removed, touches the circumcised vagina of the woman. Whether it's her clitoris, her labia, the list goes on, whatever is circumcised from the woman's vagina. So they say the hadith clearly proves, not necessarily that it's mandatory, but it proves that it was a well-known practice. And it was something that the Prophet ﷺ did not rebuke and did not repudiate those pagans from doing when they had accepted Islam. And it was well known, as we said, from the traces, the leftovers of the way of their forefather Ismail, the founder of the Arabs. And many things that the Arabs did was from his way. And Islam did not abolish those practices. So this is one of the proofs that they use. Also, some of them, they may say, as it was mentioned in the question, that when a woman is circumcised, it will lower her sexual desire. And some of them, they say it will tame her sexual desire. And if it is not lowered, or if it is not tamed, if it's not turned to be mild, it'll be out of control. It's too much. And they say, for example, this is what the people now say, okay, and there's no shyness in the deen. Islamic sex education, anatomy, this is all from the deen. They say if a woman has a very large clitoris, all right, or if a woman has very large labia, long labia, she has very long, quote unquote, in colloquial terms, say lips. They say then how she sits, how she walks, she's always in the mood for sex. She's always going to have a high sex drive, and it may lead to masturbation. It may lead to incidental orgasm. It may lead to her not having enough sex. Her husband goes and makes hajj. She has this large clitoris. She can't fulfill herself unless it's something that's not to be done. Her husband makes jihad. She can't fulfill herself. She's in the iddah. Her husband dies. He dies in war. Whatever the case may be, she can't get married. She has a problem because of her clitoris. And there's vibration, there's walking, there's sitting, there's riding. And there's always going to be some type of contact with this large or super sensitive clitoris. Everybody understand this? This is what they say. Let alone the labia as well, moving, sitting, and the list goes on. It's well known from the anatomy. Another proof that some of them use, not all of them, they say that the hadith that pertain to a woman getting circumcised, and that's a part of what's mentioned in the question, are those hadith authentic? And al-muhim, they use those hadiths, in which the Prophet ﷺ told the women to do the khitan. One narration says, al-khitamu, he says what? Makrama, it says it's a means of nobility. Sunnatun lirijal, it's a sunnah for men, makramatun linnisa, and it's a means of nobility for women. And other narrations as well. We know that the correct view is that all of those hadiths are extremely weak. Jiddan, jiddan, jiddan. None of them are authentic with regards to a woman getting circumcised. None of them are authentic in the sciences of hadith. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that if you compare the women of the Arabs and the women of, he talks about in the West, whether it's parts of Syria or whether it's actual Europe, he says you look at scandal, you look at promiscuous behavior, you look at infidelity, you look at a woman cheating and sleeping around with men. He says it's of no comparison between the two worlds. He says, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says there's no other reason behind this, or not necessarily there's no other reason, because of course taqwa first and foremost, but he says from the strongest reasons why the European women were such scarlet women, harlots, they were whores, they were so promiscuous and scandalous, is because they were not circumcised. And the women of the Arabs, meaning of the Muslims, had a small piece, not everything, but a small piece of their clitoris removed at birth, which lessens and tames the uncontrollable sexual desire of a woman. This is what they say, okay? So this is what Ibn Taymiyyah said. All right, now, you may not necessarily agree with this. That's fine. It's not my statement. It's not my opinion. I'm not saying this. What Ibn Taymiyyah said. You just look at history and look how many places from among the lands of the Arabs, or not even Arabs, Jews as well, or just people in the Far East and other parts of the world. And then you look at Western society, medieval society. the concept of a chastity belt or a chastity belt, a device, a medical device that was made and placed on a man or a woman because they could not control their sexual desires. We all know the germs, the filth, the irritation, the abrasion, the chafing of the skin, the harms that are caused by a chastity belt. Read history. Don't take it from me. This is well known in history. These devices to prevent these women because they had such strong desires. So that's what Ibn Taymiyyah is talking about, rahimahullah ta'ala. And other ulama, they say rather the hadith are extremely weak. There's no authentic hadiths to make it mandatory. And some of them may even say it's no authentic hadith to make it recommended. Whereas it's pain to the child. And some of them may say it's destruction of the creation of Allah and changing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's natural creation. Al-Muhim. What's important is those ulama who hold the view that a woman should be circumcised, none of them say mutilation of her genitals. None of them say that. Maybe some people nowadays of the later generations, but none of the great ulama of Islam, of the Salaf al-Salih, none of the mujtahideen, the four imams, their followers, those who came before and after, none of them said to totally remove everything from a woman's vagina. None of them said that. They say what is to be removed of the woman's vagina is a small piece of her clitoris. A small piece of her clitoris, and some of them may have said some of her labia. Some of the labia, some of the lips of the vagina. And that's it. Cutting and removing all of the labia. Taking out the entire clitoris. Sewing and stitching a woman's vagina, sealing it tight. And when she gets married, she has to go to the doctor to get unstitched. And she's bleeding and crying and screaming and having sex with her husband. He can't have vaginal intercourse with her. None of the great ulama never ever said anything like that. So that is cultural. That's cultural. That came from culture, which is clearly harmful. Okay? And just the concept of, yani, if a woman is going to make zina, she's going to make zina. Whether she has a large clitoris or not. If she has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she knows the rights of her husband, and the danger and the harm of zina, that's the thing that's going to prevent her from making zina. Not a chastity belt. Not removing her clitoris. Not sewing her vagina and sealing it tight. And not cutting it and mutilating it. That's not what's going to prevent her. If she's going to make zina, she's going to make zina. If she was to masturbate, she's going to masturbate. The taqwa is the thing that prevented Yusuf alayhi salam from falling with the wife of Al-Aziz. When he saw the burhan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. Allah says, thus that we prevent him from evil and from fahsha. So that is the thing that keeps a person really safe from a zina and from promiscuous behavior. So therefore, in short and in brief, Islam does not allow and promote the destruction of the body. Anything that is trimmed or clipped or shaved never is to remove. You trim your mustache. You cut it low. You don't take something that would totally remove the mustache from growing back. You trim your fingernails. You trim your toenails. You get a circumcision. The skin is removed from the penis. Not castration in Islam. It's haram to castrate a male. It's haram to castrate a female. You can't do that in Islam. Make somebody a eunuch. That's haram. And that's also another major part of history. When we talk about chattel slavery, we talk about the Arab slave trade in North Africa, in Turkey, in the Horn of Africa, North Africa. That's a big, long discussion. Because many people talk about the Atlantic slave trade, the slave trade, the Atlantic Passage, so on and so forth. That's a long discussion as well. But how many people died of infection, of death, because they were castrated? Because they wanted slaves, they wanted men to look over the harems of the sultan, of the king. He had 20 female slaves and he wanted someone to look after them, to clean them, to put on makeup, to train them, that didn't have an erection, that didn't have sexual desire himself. You cannot do that. That's haram in Islam, to castrate. The Prophet ﷺ, he forbade castration. And ulama also say it's also haram to castrate an animal as well. So therefore, to remove a woman's genitalia or genitals not from Islam, it's not from the Sunnah, rather that's a cultural practice. And anybody who wishes to attack Islam because of that, they should attack culture of Pakistan, of Somalia, of Sudan, of Nigeria, of Kenya, and not Muhammad ﷺ and the Sunnah. And those who try to mix the two terms are fools. Circumcision is one thing, mutilation is another thing. So therefore, if the woman's sexual desire, as the question says, can be fulfilled in a permissible way, why can't it stay? That's the view of those ulama. They have their reasoning, they have their proofs, they have their ways of looking at it. If you don't wish to do it, if you don't want to do it for your daughter, then don't get it done. Hopefully, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not obligatory. Okay? But when we start talking about culture, we start talking about sex and sexuality, all right, in Islam, because Islam is sexuality in Islam. The Quran talks about sex. The Quran talks about sexuality. The Hadith tell us about sexuality and the rulings, the do's and don'ts of sexuality. All right, and we start talking about Islamic culture, Muslim culture. We start talking about Arabian and Arabic culture, African culture, Indian culture. It's different. Persian culture. These are different elements. All right, some things are accepted, others aren't. But you look at the way that you look at sex and sexuality in 2017, coming from America or the UK, I'm going to tell you, it's totally different than how they looked at it back then. There was no pornography. There were no movies. There was no romantic novels. There was no boyfriend and girlfriend. There was none of these things. There was no the craziness and the people being fiends of sex and desire and orgasm. There was none of these things like this. Didn't exist. People had sex, yes. People had sexuality, yes. People made zina, yes. People cheated, yes. But how sex is looked at today is not how it was looked back then. So you may read something of a fatwa and say, how could he say that? A woman's sexual desires was different back then. Things were different. There were no cameras back then. There was no this. Things were different. Okay? So you don't have to necessarily accept it, but just understand it. And sometimes, not all the times, sometimes respect it. But we're talking about circumcision. We're not talking about sewing a woman's vagina and removing everything from a woman and when she has no sexual desires at all. And which vaginal sex is extremely painful. And this also leads to another vice, which is the concept of anal sex. And there are many people who may prefer anal sex because it's so painful to have vaginal sex. That's clearly a major problem in Islam. To destroy Allah's creation, which you have done, and then you go to the haram act of anal sex. All right? So therefore, that's the ruling on that. In brief, that's a summary of the issue. This topic needs to be discussed in the book. This is just a small summary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best. Hopefully that's clear.